stop what you're doing. Do not summon for Anby, or maybe you should. And that's what we're talking about in today's video, guys, whether you should and or should not summon for Silver Soilder Anb. So we're going to be going over a couple things today, guys, going over from her overall damage to her free-to-play viability and then to her future proofing. So let's just go ahead and start off first with her damage, right? Starting off with combat first, guys, we all know that she's an electric type character. She does electric damage, which is very unique. We'll talk about in 1 second. And then secondly, guys, she has simple combos, but she can become more complex. So the reason why I put electric on this list here is because electric is actually very significant in the world of Zenless Zone Zero. It is the only, I want to say the only damage type in the game, apart from two enemies, that stand on its own weakness type. This means that no other type share a weakness with this weakness type. As you can see right here, all these enemies are just weak to electric. There's two enemies in the game that share a weakness with electric and ether, that being the mixture and the beholder engine. That's one of the bosses we have in the game, but everything else here, guys, is going to be strictly electric only, and nothing really else. The new boss is even just electric only, so that makes her very special in her own right, because this means if you don't have like a good electric character on your account, going over Pry 1 really quick here, guys, and to look at the other characters we have in the game that would be electric type characters that you would replace on a team for her, right? We have Anton as a DPS you could use. We have Grace, Harumasa, Yanagi as well. Like, there's not really that many options, electrically speaking, that you could use to really slot in a player, especially if you started playing in 1.4. Started playing in 1.4, you didn't have access to Yanagi, so you wouldn't have her per se. You might have Grace, you probably have Harumasa on your account. We'll get into the Harumasa situation later in the video, but overall, guys, electric stands on its own two legs here, and there's not really any free-to-play options outside of Harumasa for the electric typing versus something like fire, which, yes, fire does have its own enemies that are weak to just fire. There are also a lot of enemies that are weak to fire and physical as dual typing, and the same thing can be said for ice and ether as well. Ice and ether have a very significant combo up with each other, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's the end-all be-all of why you should pull for a character, right? But weakness type really does help you out do damage on enemies, and if you're struggling with beating content and time, having this typing does help out a lot more. It gives you a higher damage multiplier, so that is why this is so significant here. Now let's move on to simple combos but can become more complex. So how I see her combos right now in the game, guys, is literally just basic to basic to charge those marks up, and then after you basic a couple times here, guys, you're going to be hitting them with an SP move or your skill move. So this is the basic combo here, right? You can even enhance this with going EX into SP here as well, because EX skill will be charging up the marks, which then you'll get the additional damage off with the SP move there. So the whole premise around her kit is building up these marks on the enemies, and it's very easy to build up, and any player can really build this up with ease, I would say. The reason why I say it's more complex is because I think the complexities come when you have your other characters on the team. The complexities come from swapping in and out the field with other characters, and that's why I want to go ahead and talk about buffs right now, guys. So going over buffs, number one, guys, she's going to be applying a damage increase for any marked enemy on the field. This means if you swap her out, you have another character on the field, they'll be doing increased damage to the marked enemy. Number two, guys, follow-up attacks will be dealing increased crit damage on the enemies as well. So if you have characters on the team that are doing follow-up attacks, whether they're on field or off field doing those follow-up attacks, they will be doing additional crit damage. Anby, for example, can do on-field additional attacks whenever she does her SP move and goes through. You do get technical follow-up attacks off that move, so you're getting this buff for Anby as well here. And then finally, guys, increased days for marked enemies as well. This means if you have a character on your team that's a stunner, you'll be getting increased days on those enemies. So what this is going to be doing is playing really well with those characters that have additional days type damage, like the new character we're getting in the game, god damn it, which is Miss Trigger, right? But that's how I can see her being more complex to play as far as the team play goes overall, which we're going to go ahead and cover now, because what do you want with her, right? You want additional damage or follow-up damage, so she's proccing these buffs off and helping that up, right? So you definitely want that, right? She's the main DPS for right now. We'll get into future-proof ability on why I think she could technically become a sub-DPS. In the future, I can see her kind of working like a lesser Topaz from Honkai Star Rail, just because of some of these buffs right here, giving increased damage to marked enemies and giving increased follow-up damage and stuff like that. I do see her maybe being played in that role in the future, or could be played in that role in the future. We'll have to wait to see that. But anyways, that's besides the point right now. She wants additional damage and follow-up damage. We get pulchra for absolutely free in 1.6, so you already have an additional type damage person on the team, or additional type stunner on the team, or a stunner on your team that does additional damage, so it'll be helping her out a lot with that, with her being absolutely free. That's a great fucking support to run with her, right? For free, absolutely free, during the patch, right? And also, she can be a non-break DPS, meaning she can do a good majority of damage while the enemy's not breaking. I see her very akin to characters like Juyan and Harumasa. Why? Because they're very bursty type characters. You wait till you get their stacks up. Either you wait for Harumasa here to get his little traps down, or you wait for Juyan to get her stacks up with her shotgun shells. You wait for the enemy's broken, they get a large buff, and then you do damage off that, right? As for Silver Solider Anb, guys, you're waiting for that little mark to fill up here, and then you're doing your big bursty damage on that mark here. So that's why I can kind of see her in that round, but she doesn't rely on the enemy needing to be broken down to do her main source of damage. And that also plays into what I want to talk about now, guys, and that goes into the free-to-play viability section, the best teams that she can be ran on. And the first team I want to talk about here that relates to this right here, I think in the future she can be act as a sub DPS, or she can act as a pseudo weird situation DPS. I don't know how to call the team right now. I don't even know if this would work. But a team with Harumasa here, her obviously, and then you'd be running a breaker on the team, whether that be Trigger, Pulchra, either one of these characters that are breaking the enemy shield down. Because what you could technically do with this team, right, you have her that's constantly breaking the enemy down, right, bam bam bam, breaking enemy down while she's off field, right? So you have her on the field dealing damage here, right? But where does Harumasa get his source from? He gets his main source of damage when the enemy is broken down, or enemies afflicted with an anomaly, right? So you're breaking the enemy down, you break that enemy, right? You've already used up most of your skill, you used up most of your mark, maybe you just put a mark on the enemy. You bring him to the field now, that's getting increased damage from having a stunned enemy out, and then you're doing more damage overall because you're doing damage to a marked enemy. So you're probably actually getting more damage out if you play this correctly, with him coming in as that sub on that break to do a good amount of damage, and then you just rotate back to Silver Solider Anb. So that's the role I can see her being played in right now, guys. I do genuinely think that is a decently good team comp that you could run, though you do need to be skillful, and I'm not skillful, therefore I am not going to run it because I suck ass at this game, technically speaking wise. Fingers don't work how they used to, huh? Anyways, off topic of this now, guys. That's just a little sussy team I want to throw out there. Let's go ahead and talk about some more teams that you can work on, right? So let's go ahead and bring Silver Solider Anb down here, right? She's always the number one on our team, right? She's always going to be on the team, right? So with that being said, who else do you run on the team? You obviously always need to run a breaker on the team. So if we're talking in terms of breakers here, guys, you could run Trigger on the team here. That works. You could run Pulchra on the team, which is a free-to-play character at that. So that's another option you could run there. Where's the normal Anb at? Normal Anb can also run as a breaker here, which is also very free-to-play friendly here. So you have a couple different free-to-play options. You could run Lighter. Don't really recommend Lighter. He doesn't really give any buffs, but he's a breaker, so he does technically work. You could run Lycon, but Lycon only really buffs up characters that are ice, so I don't really recommend that there either. Colada can be run there, but she really only buffs up chance hacks and stuff like that, so I really don't recommend her being ran there overall. And then you have Chingy as well. I think Chingy is a great option to run there too. So realistically, guys, you have two free-to-play breakers in the game that can be running a team with her. But now let's go ahead and talk about the support role here, right? Astroyal gonna be best in slot fucking here for sure, right? BIS 100 fucking %. Caesar King, I think, will also work pretty well here too. As long as the character on the team has access to a defensive assist, you're getting her additional ability off right here. So she is also gonna work because Silver Solider Anb has a defensive assist. Anyways, guys, outside of this go, Lucy also works. Just a great breaker, gives you extra attack. Gonna be really nice for getting her extra damage. Nicole, free to play. Lucy, free to play. Shokaku, free to play. All these other characters can realistically work here. She has a really free to play team you can run her on. And I genuinely think her team is super free to play friendly. It's not like a team with like Yanagi, right? Where you, I mean, I guess a lot of the teams in this game are kind of free to play, but I feel like she does have more free to play options than a lot of the other characters in the game do. She works so well with a lot of these other free-to-play characters. But I do think her teams are actually very free-to-play friendly, and this would be getting a big green check mark from me. Now let's go on to build, right? Because I do think the build is going to be a problem. First of all, guys, you're not giving many free stats in the stat department, guys, without her signature W engine. Her signature W engine gives you a lot of crit damage. Literally so much crit damage, it's actually unreal, right? But the thing with this as well, guys, is her build is overall hard. It's not like a character like I would say Evelyn is. Evelyn gives a lot of free stats. She does not give a lot of free stats. You do need to invest more in the disk drives that you have to actually make her good. Also, her new best in slot is a completely new set that's made for her, basically, so you're gonna have to farm for that as well. So that's more resources and more time invested you're putting into the game to get her best in slot set, and then you're having to get good stats for those sets as well. So like I said, more of a time investment there would be a definite downside for you. And then finally, Lycon options. her best in slot light cone option, guys, are really few and far between in terms of like what you're actually going to use on her, because you really do want crit rate or crit damage. A lot of those options are going to be signature W engines, right? Riot Suppressor, Heartstring, they all have crit rate, crit damage. Steel Cushion you could technically use, but then you're missing on this ability here because she doesn't do any physical damage, so you're missing out on a big portion of what this allows you to do. It does give you crit rate, which is great at all, but the only other option I would see you having here is maybe a move like this right here. It would be Brimstone, gives you its increased attack, but doesn't give you increased crit rate or crit damage. Cannon Rotor, which is a BP light cone, you have to pay for it. It gives you increased crit rate, that's great, right? But then outside of that, what do you run? You could run Markata Desire, but if you didn't get it during the 1.4 patch, you wouldn't have this, so like you're kind of shit out of luck there. And then finally, Starlight Engine would be the only free-to-play option there, which gives you some extra attack in there, which is not the best thing in the world, but I mean, I guess it still works. But overall, guys, doesn't really have that many free-to-play W engine options there. So for the build section here, for this, I'll be giving this a down arrow. Now, finally, to the last one here, the Harumasa in the room. I told you we bring it up, guys. Harumasa is a free character that you got if you played 1.4. If you didn't play 1.4, you don't have him, okay? Hey, hate to be the bearer of the bad news. You do not have him. But I would like to say with Harumasa, guys, Harumasa is only good if you are a gamer, okay? This motherfucker requires so much fucking skill to play properly and get good damage out with. It's absolutely unreal. But you do have to be a gamer to play with him, and I don't think she's gonna, I think she's much easier to play. I genuinely do. And she has access to less niche damage as well, meaning you don't have to break the enemy down, right? Whereas I would say with her, right, you can get a good portion of damage out with her with the enemy not being broken. Instead of condensing all of your like damage down into one small window, you can get a good amount of damage before that window, and then you can get the rest of your damage in that window, right? Like her damage is much more spread out across the enemy being stunned and not stunned. I do think that this is a pro and a con. It just depends on the situation you're in and if you're a gamer or not. Now finally, future proofing. She relies on future follow-up units. If you're not getting any future follow-up units, if they don't plan on investing on this much more in the future, this could be kind of bad for her, because the less follow-up supports we get, the worse that she's gonna be, right? Because then you're stun locked to using pulchra or trigger, and if they get power creep, then what's the point? Because a lot of her kit relies on follow-up attack, so no future follow-up could be a problem. She also has the problem of being a main DPS as well. That's not to say that she can't be ran in dual DPS, because I can see her being ran as a dual DPS. I don't think she has that much utility to really be ran as a sub DPS. Like, she does have some there with having marked enemies. You can attack the marked enemies and do increased damage and stuff like that, so I think she can work in that way as a sub DPS, but I think it does have to be more of a unique and niche scenario, because I feel like the other person on the team has to be giving themselves massive buffs for this to be a really good option to run. And then finally, future enemy types as well. Guys, the biggest thing with this is it really depends on what the dual typing for electric will be. Will it be ether? If it's ether, then she's still gonna be really good in your account for a while to come, because we don't really have many ether DPS in the game right now. Well, we're getting an ether DPS in the near future, judging from the set we have, or ether anomaly anyways in the future, judging from the new set we have. But if it's ether and electric, bro, you might just be set with this. Like, she might be a good pull for your account, actually, because genuinely we have one DPS in ether right now, and we have a couple DPS in electric, but they're not really all like the best options in the world, right? So I mean, like, overall that could be good. Hey, but if it swaps like a fire or an ice, hey buddy, it might just be up for you. There's really good options, especially Piper right here is a free-to-play option. In that physical typing, it would make her better. It would make her not as good, though. Anyways, guys, those are all, like, the main points I want to bring up here. Should you summon for Silver Soldier Anb? Is she worth your Jades? I genuinely don't think she's a must-pull. I'm just going to put it how it is. I don't think it is. I think the build is kind of hard. I think she'll be really easy to play, but I do think there are better fish in the sea that you could get, like, especially, like, we already have someone in the game that's better than her, right? And that's going to be, what, the Miyabi, right? Miyabi's already better than her. Do you see her being better than Miyabi? No. Miyabi's good, don't get me wrong, but she kind of already covers the ice type. Then you have a free-to-play character in the game like Piper here that covers your physical typing. And now we're getting pulchra as another breaker into the game. So, I mean, she could technically cover up for your Harumasa. If you had a free-to-play Harumasa, you got a free breaker there. Very nice. It really just depends on how you want to go up against these electric type enemies. When is the nature electric DPS we're getting in the game? I think that she's not the worst pull in the world for your account, just because she is electric, and electric is kind of niche right now. But overall, I don't feel like she's a must pull. I don't feel like you have to pull her. I feel like you're much better off pulling supports and then coping with the other DPS within the game. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. What do you think on Anb? Are you pulling for Anb or you're not? I'm pulling for Anb personally. But what are you doing? Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one later. Bye-bye.